Okay, so welcome to this next video in which we're discussing endothelins and the heart. Okay, right, so we're just discussing the troponin complex. So, the troponin complex is made up of 3 troponin proteins. So the one which is attached to the tropomyosin is known as troponin T. So this is troponin T. Troponin T, and it's called troponin T because it is the one which attaches to the tropomyosin. T for tropomyosin. Okay, then there is this one in the middle here, which is known as troponin C. Okay, so this is, sorry, not troponin C, this is. Troponin C. Okay, and this final one at the bottom here, this is known as troponin I. Okay, and it is troponin I which attaches to the actin filament. Okay, so what colour should we colour in troponin I? Red, I think. So, basically, what happens is in a cardiomyocyte that is at rest, the sarcomeres are not contracting, and the reason is that the troponin is in a certain conformation which holds the tropomyosin over the actin filament, such that the myosin filaments cannot interact with the actin filament. They cannot gain access to the myosin binding sites on the actin filament. Okay, when calcium goes up in the cardiomyocyte, that causes contraction, and the reason is that the calcium binds to troponin C, and troponin C changes conformation, and it then transfers this change in conformation, to troponin I, which moves, and then it moves the tropomyosin relative to the actin, and the change in conformation of the tropomyosin then makes the actin filament available for the myosin filament to interact with. So, basically, when calcium goes up in the cytoplasm of the cardiomyocyte, i.e. when you get this global calcium signal, what it's going to cause is it's going to cause changes in the way that tropomyosin is wrapped around the actin filament via its interaction with the troponin, specifically troponin C of the troponin complex. And this is then going to allow the myosin filaments to interact with the actin filaments and pull the actin filaments towards the M disc in the center of the sarcomere and cause contraction of the sarcomere. Okay, and the way this is going to cause contraction of the entire cell is that you don't just have one sarcomere within a cardiomyocyte. Instead, you have many, many sarcomeres. So here is another M disc here. And this M disc here that I've drawn as part of this initial sarcomere, it will also have actin filaments going in the opposite direction. And this M disc here will have actin filaments. And then in the middle of them, you'll have this M disc with the myosin filaments here. So let's colour that in. So in green is the is the actin filaments coming off these Z lines or Z discs. Here in pink is this other Z disc here. Okay. Here in orange is the M disc in the centre, and coming off the M disc is the myosin filaments, which are in blue. Okay. Right. Now, basically, what you have is you have these whole strips of sarcomeres connected to one another, and all of the sarcomeres can contract, and when they all contract, you're going to contract the whole row of sarcomeres, and basically right at the end of these rows of sarcomeres, they then attach onto the cell membrane of the cardiomyocyte at either end, and that's going to contract the whole row and bring the two, and that's going to pull on the two membranes and bring those closer together. So the whole cell is going to contract in length. And you're not just going to have one row of sarcomeres, you'll have multiple rows of sarcomeres in the cardiomyocyte. Okay, and this will result in the whole cardiomyocyte. When all of these sarcomeres contract, all the rows will contract, and the whole cardiomyocytes will contract. Okay, so that's the mechanism by which cardiomyocytes contract. Okay, now what is going to happen when you get alkalization as a result of endothelin 1 binding to its endothelin receptor so long ago now, is that the drop in proton concentration is going to make troponin, this troponin complex, more sensitive to calcium. Okay, so for a certain calcium concentration, you're going to get more effect on the troponin proteins. Okay, and this appears to be that the actual troponin proteins have a higher efficacy when calcium binds to them. So calcium binds to the troponin complex, and it increases the probability that the troponin complex will change conformation and move the tropomyosin protein, but it doesn't make it 100%. So when there's a higher proton concentration, what's going to happen is it will increase the probability maybe that the troponin complex is actually going to undergo the change in conformation in response to the calcium. So it increases the effect that a certain concentration of calcium will have on the sarcomeres, okay? So for a certain concentration of calcium in the cardiomyocytes, you're going to get a certain amount of sarcomeres activated, and if you've got a low concentration of protons, the number of sarcomeres you'll get activated for a certain calcium concentration will be greater. Okay.